Welcome, everyone. I'm Bob Beagle, Vice President for University Advancement, and we're very happy to have everybody here today for this brown bag luncheon. This is President Dooley's second conversation with the President. As he told you last fall, he's going to do these every semester. And by this time, everybody knows the President and his background, so I don't need to do a formal introduction. He will be making comments and talking about some of the things that he knows you're interested in. As you know, when we publicize this event, we ask people to feel free to submit questions. And we got a number of questions, all of which were signed, by the way. We got a number of questions, and that has helped President Dooley guide his thinking of what to talk about. And then he will also spend time doing a question and answer with you. So at this time, very pleased to present President David Dooley.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you. I have a few props today because what I'm going to do is highlight for all of us, in part so that I don't forget, and in part so that you're aware of just how much is going on at the University of Rhode Island that I think we can all be very proud of, most of which doesn't have really anything to do with me. And so what I want to do is talk about the contributions that all of you and a lot of people who aren't here today, because they're probably busy doing the things that they should be doing, not that you're not. On behalf of the students and their parents and the state, the people of Rhode Island, and there really is an amazing array of things that are happening. One of the sort of take-home messages from our visiting team from NEASC, who's our regional accreditor, when they came in to do their focus visit a few months ago at the exit interview, they were sharing with me and a couple of other people sort of their impressions, final impressions after their visit. And one of the comments they made is that they were frankly astounded by the number of things that are being worked on simultaneously at the University of Rhode Island and the degree of progress that's being made in all those multiple areas seemingly concurrently. They thought that that was highly unusual in a university culture. They thought it was really admirable. They were surprised that we were able to do so many things so quickly. And to me, just so you know, that was music to my ears. I think universities, as you well know as well as I do, have been criticized for a long time as an institution, as the kind of institution that's far more interested in protecting the status quo and remembering the past, whether the past is 500 years ago, 25 years ago, or just a month ago, than it is about thinking productively about transformation, about change, and about progress in terms of its fundamental practices and its core values or its priorities and strategic goals. So for URI, I think, to be recognized as an institution that is moving forward at a rate which many external observers will find quite surprising, to me, was a very, very good indication that this is an institution that started to do things long before I came and has continued to do them extraordinarily well. And that's the kind of thing I wanted to highlight today. And let me begin with something that's probably on everybody's mind, and that's the budget. You've read the newspapers, you've seen the news reports, you know that we have an unusual budget situation this year in the sense that we're putting together a budget for higher education just after a gubernatorial transition and just after a major transition in the Board of Governors for higher education, all of which has provided a sort of a different context for our work this year. And I think what it has pointed to me is the great value of the participation of the entire campus community in that process, and particularly the members of our Strategic Budget and Planning Council. I'm delighted with the work that they did last year, very pleased with the work that they're doing on all of our behalfs through this fall and now into the spring around the budget, and in particular to look at the consequences of the recommendations that the governor has made and to begin to think through what those mean. You've probably heard that the original budget that we submitted, that the Board of Governors submitted to former Governor Carcieri's administration, was a budget that called for increased state appropriation and no increase in tuition. Now, given, I think, the economic climate and the fiscal climate of Rhode Island, I think the new administration found that to be too ambitious to try to achieve in a single year. But very significantly, and I think importantly, and I don't know how long in the past you have to go to, but it's at least been several years, let's put it that way, since a governor has come forward and proposed an increase in the operations budget for higher education and for the University of Rhode Island. And I think it was very significant that even in this financial climate, the new administration did that. Those proposals have been genuinely well received in the legislature. We're optimistic. I mean, there's a lot yet to do. We're going to work very hard to try to get at least that part of the governor's budget through the process. But we have a lot of support, and I think it provides us a different context for doing the difficult work of crafting balanced budgets than we've enjoyed in the past. That doesn't mean we're going to have a tuition freeze, as desirable as that might be to many of our students and their families, and a goal that I think we want to sort of seriously look at over time is how can we improve the funding that comes to the University of Rhode Island from the state of Rhode Island that would enable us to moderate or even fix tuition for some period of time. I think that would be a good goal for us to work towards. That's not going to be possible in this year. We have notified students about what we anticipate tuition will be next year. We've got those letters out. We're building the class. And the Strategic Budget and Planning Council is now working through the consequences of that. It will be a tight budget year. There's no question about that, because even with the influx of new money, if that's approved by the General Assembly, the cost increase between this year and next, just in terms of maintaining what we call the current services budget of the university, will not be covered by that increase. It will not be completely covered by the kind of tuition increase that we want to put out there, because we don't want to, frankly, put too big a strain on either our residents of Rhode Island or the non-residents, on who play a very important role in building our budgets for next year. So we will have to do some budget reductions in all probability, but I think they're much smaller than they would have been otherwise, and I believe that the Budget Council will provide a very good framework and set of recommendations for us to build the final budget for the 2012 year. That's where we are on that, and I just want to commend the members of that council for the work that they're doing and continue to do. I think at the same time that that's been going on, a number of other things have been happening at the university that I want to highlight. I want to mention to you that we're very pleased over the past few years about the strong growth in the research budgets and the competitiveness of our faculty. I can't say enough about how strong our faculty are in terms of their ability to compete in an increasingly competitive climate for major research funding. They've done an outstanding job there. I think the research portfolio and activity at the university has been growing on a very good trajectory for the past few years. It continues even in these tight economic times. I think we're strongly improving our technology transfer, IP, and intellectual property protection at the institution. We've made a critical new hire there that'll help us with that. That's Jim Patel, who's very, very experienced in these matters, who will come in and help us, I think, be even more effective than we've been in the past. I also recently announced to the Faculty Senate that we're taking the next step in our assessment of a proposed research and technology park here in Kingston, that we've contracted with an outside organization, Robert Scheer. This organization, very experienced in this way. They've done dozens and dozens of projects up and down the East Coast. They have been contracted to do the feasibility and initial marketing study and development planning for what a research park might look like here in Kingston, and I think that is a very, very important potential step for us. It's entirely contingent upon us being sure that the financial models will work. This is not something that we believe the state of Rhode Island is going to be in a position to fund. They may be able to assist us in some way. It's not something that we want to ask the students to fund by tuition increases. So that means we're going to have to generate the funding with private partners or public partners in order to make this a reality. And that is the next step, and that's what we'll be assessing with Robert Scheer. A lot's been going on that I'm especially pleased about in our efforts to really dramatically improve an already excellent undergraduate education. And I just want to mention a few of those because the number of people that have been involved is quite large. And I want to mention the progress that we're making here as a university in the delivery and design of web-based courses and enhancements for courses and the production or creation of blended courses. There was a lot of energy that was generated around our academic summit this last January, which was a very miserable day. And a lot of people managed to make it in the midst of that miserable day over to this room to hear a brilliant presentation by Candace Tilley of Carnegie Mellon University on the use of modern technologies and web-based learning systems to enhance student learning. We had over 100 members of our community come out and participate. That was very, very encouraging. And the dialogue, the questions, the ideas that were generated, I think were really inspiring. And we've seen a lot of follow-up since then. I just want to highlight a couple of things that with Kathleen Torren's leadership, she's an associate professor in communication studies. She's serving as the interim coordinator for online teaching and learning. We're up and running. And faculty, I think, have been coming forward and putting together a lot of effort into workshops and course design that is really very encouraging. And I'm pleased, very pleased, that the number of blended or web-facilitated courses at our campus has increased by nearly 100% between 2007 and 2010, and the number of fully online courses has increased by nearly 75% in that same period. I think that's important. That's never going to replace a lot of what we do in our laboratories and classrooms, but it is important to augment what we do. But because our goal ultimately is to create the kind of learning environment that our students can take advantage of all the time, 24/7, and create multiple pathways for a student to work through our curriculum, ultimately more determined by their own ability and their own hard work than it is by the arbitrary confines of an academic calendar to complete a degree, to graduate from the University of Rhode Island, and to be able to pursue their dreams. That's our goal. I think it's our responsibility to provide those kinds of opportunities to students, so I'm very pleased to see that we are making good progress. More needs to be done, a lot done. More probably needs to be done more quickly than we've done in the past, but I think the trajectory is going in the right direction, and I'm very encouraged. Now, most of you would not think, and I probably would agree with you, that faculty senate meetings are the most inspirational kinds of gatherings that we have on the campus. No offense. But the last faculty senate meeting I attended was, in fact, at least for me, very inspirational. And that was a meeting in which Sandy Hicks, who's heading up the General Education Committee that's been charged by the Faculty Senate to develop new recommendations for general education at the University of Rhode Island, presented her report, the report of her group. And I just was frankly, as I said it earlier, just inspired by the work that they're doing, the progress that they're making, and the opportunity it provides. And let me just highlight a couple of things that they're doing. First, I commend the Senate for the charge they gave the group. It was a very, very wise and insightful, I think, sort of task that they assigned this committee. And let me just highlight a couple of those. One was to remove, I think, the two-year boundaries on general education and to view general education as something that can take place throughout a student's time at the University of Rhode Island. I think that's very, very thoughtful and exactly the kind of thing that we want to encourage, because one of the opportunities that we have when we do that is to give even our seniors and fifth-year students the opportunity to do something that broadens, enhances, and deepens their study as part of the general education curriculum requirements of the University of Rhode Island. I thought in particular the idea that it should be a universal general education curriculum and flexible enough to fit all majors and allow students the freedom to move between majors and colleges. That's essential. It's simply essential. It's what our students deserve. Frankly, it's what they need to be successful. It's what we ought to be doing to ensure that when they come here and begin their educations at the University of Rhode Island, that they have a good and clear pathway towards graduation that they understand, and that flexibility and movement, they have the opportunity to change their mind, to explore, and to still complete their work in a timely way. I think that's our responsibility, and I could not be more pleased with the effort that's going in to make that a reality. The focus on learning outcomes, I think, is exactly right. It's exactly where we want to be. And the idea that we would have dynamic and interdisciplinary courses to attract and engage students, and we're already beginning to do that with the Grand Challenge courses and many other courses across the campus. All of this work to me was, as I've said, frankly, inspirational, and was one of the best faculty senate meetings I've ever attended. It was the chance to hear that report. And I want to thank all of the faculty, the students and staff who are engaged in that work. It's very, very important work. In fact, it's hard to find more important work on the campus. To facilitate that work, I think, I'm going to, and I know he's already agreed to do this, so he's not going to be surprised, I'm going to commit the provost and I to providing dollars over the summer to enable this group to continue their work. So that we can move this agenda ahead on the timelines that I think make sense for our students, so that we can meet the very ambitious timeline that was laid out, I think, by the committee as presented by Professor Hicks, and have this implemented in a time, I think, that really makes sense for our students. We'll be putting money behind that effort. It's money that I'm sure will be very, very well spent and very well earned. Another thing that I want to mention about this is the growing emphasis that we're seeing across the campus in a variety of places in experiential learning. And again, the faculty have been taking the lead here. And it's been very, very encouraging for me to see the growth in the number of undergraduates who are engaged in scholarship and creative work and research, the increasing activities available to students in internships. I think that's very, very important. I think this can ultimately be a hallmark of the University of Rhode Island. In fact, one of the things that makes it distinctive in the world of higher education is the role of undergraduate research, creative work, scholarship, internships, experiential learning in our curriculum. To see that it gets built into things like, just use it as an example because I got to see it recently and I had a chance to write about it a little bit. The work of the production lab in the writing and rhetoric department, I think, is really amazing, and what the opportunity it provides for students to come in and grapple using state-of-the-art tools with problems about how to present their own work, their own creative work to an external audience. I think that's a very, very critical kind of learning that is at its basis experiential learning at its best. One of the things that's happened over the past several months that I've been very encouraged about is in conversations with companies ranging from Hasbro, Amtrol, Amgen, Raytheon, Electric Boat, General Dynamics, large and small. We have seen a growing interest in capturing the interest of URI students to come to work for those companies and to intern at those companies, and an interest on those companies in coming to campus and participate right from the first year in helping students make informed choices about how to prepare themselves for the careers that they may have in mind, providing mentoring, engaging with our faculty here to enhance the kind of work that our faculty can do with the perspectives that may be available from professionals and practitioners out there outside our boundaries. That's very exciting. We're hoping to really formalize a number of those relationships in the coming months and build something really special in terms of providing multiple pathways, again, to attract students to the university, to move those students through the university curriculum, to give them the kind of experiential learning experiences that they need to be prepared for what they want to do after graduation, and to have a clear pathway that may lead from the time they're a freshman to a job directly upon graduation. And I think that's critically important, and we're really encouraged by the kind of feedback we're getting and interest we're receiving from many employers and companies, communities, and others across the state. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about our globalization and internationalization initiatives. We're making good progress there. We just completed an external assessment of our efforts, and Don DeHaze and I are looking through the recommendations, and we'll be sharing those with the Global Task Force, with the deans, and with others who've worked on this internally already and have already generated a number of good ideas and a lot of momentum. We've made some progress. I think we're close to finalizing an agreement with Associates for Cultural Exchange to bring a first-class, world-class English as a second language program to the University of Rhode Island to make this a more desirable place for international students to come and study, for international scholars, frankly, to come and work with our faculty and students. And I'm very excited about that. One of the things I want to mention in this regard, that to me, you get a lot of emails, and a lot of emails contain a lot of good news at this place, but one which really caught my eye was the recent announcement of the $11.5 million award from USAID to a team led by Brian Crawford and his colleagues at the Coastal Resource Center, the GSO, and the Sells Fishery Center to do outreach, education, and development work in Senegal. That, I think, is a great example of the global reach of this institution, of the fact that our faculty and students are making a difference not just in Rhode Island, not just in the United States, but globally. I think it will provide many, many opportunities, as it has in the past, for global engagement of our students to do critical work, even more possibilities for experiential learning, research, and creative work. And that's the kind of international engagement that we want to build on at the University of Rhode Island. We want to expand. And I just wanted to highlight that because it was something that I found to be very, very impressive. And we're moving ahead, I think, a lot with our efforts to build community at the University of Rhode Island. And there are a few things that I wanted to mention about that. One, I think the kind of community that we're seeking to build, as exemplified by the work that we've done for a long time in Central Falls, is to reach out and help enhance education for all children in Rhode Island before they're potential students at the University of Rhode Island. And I think a recent grant that we got, it's another large grant. We're a couple years into it now. $12.5 million from the National Science Foundation to do education with middle schools and high schools, develop teacher skills in the STEM disciplines, science, technology, mathematics, engineering. Critical work, critical work. And I think it's being extraordinarily successful. I've visited some of the labs where those teachers have been working, spoken to some of the teachers, seen the kinds of things that they're working on. Very, very encouraging work, very important work. And I think it's part of building a community in our state, a partnership in our state with K-12 education. That's really, really important. And a couple of other things that's happening. I've been, as you've known, we made the decision several months ago to move forward on one of the recommendations that came to me from the Strategic Budget and Planning Committee, and that is that we move ahead with the creation of the Office of a Chief Diversity Officer, and then we made the commitment to fill that office on an interim basis to begin the difficult work, but very necessary and desirable work of not only assessing what we're doing and developing plans for how to do it better, but to assess the role of the office and the nature of the office, the structure of the office, and to lay the groundwork for filling the position on a permanent basis. And that's going extraordinarily well in my judgment. But I was very concerned, because the enormously good work that Catherine Friedman is doing was scheduled to come to an end in about another month. And I was very lucky. One of these moments occasionally happen. Without ever mentioning it to her, Catherine Friedman came into my office one day and said, you know, I love this institution. I feel like I'm fully engaged in what's going on here. I would like to see some of these things through to a point that I'm not going to be able to get to by May or June. Would you, Mr. President, consider possibly extending my time here. It was one of those few moments of self-control I actually have. I managed to remain in my seat. I didn't yell. I simply smiled briefly and said, "Catherine, what a marvelous idea. Let me consider that. Yes." So I'm pleased to announce that she will be with us through the next academic year. And I think that will give us time to continue the critical work that she's begun with all of you, many of you, in assessment, in planning, in building, I think, and institutionalizing community, equity, and diversity into the very fabric of the institution, to making that a hallmark of what we stand for and who we are as a matter of the identity of the University of Rhode Island. That's every bit as important a part of our identity as oceanographic research or undergraduate education or anything else that we're known for. I think we can make a lot of progress between now and next year, including launching the search for the position on a permanent basis, which I also need to tell you, after listening to the voices, because you didn't quit talking across the campus, you kept coming back, many of you, to this point, and listening to the assessments and analysis that Catherine's presented. I have concluded that it, in fact, is in the best interest of the institution in the long run that we craft this position as a vice president, and that we bring the new person on a permanent basis in at that level. That is one of the ways that we want to institutionalize the progress that we've been making, and that's one of the things that I think we'll be able to do. And fortunately for the Budget Council, I think looking at it, it's a move that would not have financial implications. So that, I think, is a very good step forward for the institution, and one that we'll be moving ahead with. As we think about what else that office needs to have, there will be budget implications, and those we'll bring into the Strategic Budget and Planning Committee to talk about. But I think we can do this in an affordable way. I think we can do it in a way that's very sensitive and very consistent with the culture and history, as well as the aspirations of the University of Rhode Island. And I think that's a way that we need to go. But there's more about that I want to say, and perhaps this notion, to return to where I started, that we're able as an institution to do so many things simultaneously, I think is illustrated by the following. Next week, we have two really important days that are happening. We're having Discovery Day on April 13th to highlight the research that faculty, and particularly students, are doing at the University of Rhode Island to celebrate its accomplishments. A great day. A great day. We're also, the day before, doing our annual Diversity Awards and honoring a very distinguished alumnus of the University of Rhode Island, and that individual is Paul Hastings. We're delighted that he'll be coming. He's a very distinguished graduate of this institution. And he'll be joining us in both the Discovery Day and to receive the Lifetime Achievement Award for Diversity. That same day, that of Discovery Day, I could not be, and so I want to give it a little shout out here, more pleased that our students have been active and have organized, Branford, Avis, and the students have organized the March for Equality and Inclusive Community. And I would urge all of us to support it and to celebrate the fact that this is a student initiative, because they see, they hear what we've been talking about. They were talking about it before us. They've led the charge in many respects. And they say this is a way to make a very positive statement, not just to the university community, but to the state and to a much broader community about the importance of community, equity, and diversity on this campus. I love their byline here, love is blind and hate is deaf. I think that captures so much about what we're trying to accomplish here. And so I would urge us all to join them and take that stand. For me, it means sort of trying to run from a Diversity Day set of presentations by very distinguished speakers out to the march to congratulate those who are participating, and then probably back into something else. But to the degree that you can fit it in and participate, I would urge you to do that. Another thing organized by our faculty and students is tonight, that speaks to global community and that is our Japan earthquake relief event tonight. To think we have a lot of students here, we have faculty here, other members of our community who are from Japan. And we have a tragedy that has unfolded there that is really almost unfathomable. And I think this is a great example this evening of how URI can reach out in the midst of everything else that we're doing and try to help and to make a difference there as well. So I just want to thank everybody that I've mentioned and all of the people that I haven't been able to mention in the 30 minutes I promised I would hold myself to. And thank you for the work that you're doing on behalf of the students and their families and the people of Rhode Island and this nation, and indeed the world, for the progress that we're making, for the numbers of things that are going on at this institution simultaneously, which I think when you take a step back and look at them, truly are astonishing, that a small place is able to do so much in such a short period of time. It makes it exciting to be here, very exciting to be a part of it, and I just wanted for us all to recognize just all the great things that are happening here and what we can do together. And thank you very much, and I'll be happy to talk about anything else. Questions or comments? All right, we're done? Yes. She is. Stand up, Catherine. Any other questions or comments from someone? I actually brought with me the questions that we received by email, which were some very good questions, which I can deal with if you all need some time to think about a question that you would have. The first question that I got was about experiential learning, and it came from a professor in the College of Business Administration who's working also on our MBA program. And basically the question was, what's going on at URI to incentivize faculty to take on students in experiential learning projects? You know, that's a very, very critical question. And it points to something that we've talked about that I think we need to really work in a much more focused way on going forward. Not that there isn't a lot of effort and energy and enthusiasm for it. And I think as we think about building the kind of research enterprise we want, as we think about creating the kind of 21st century undergraduate learning experiences that we want and that our students need and deserve in this campus, I think necessarily we are going to have to ask some good questions. And I think interesting and hopefully, I think, inspiring questions about how faculty's roles need to change. Because if faculty are going to be asked to engage students in more research and scholarly work, to have students in their offices, in the labs, on field trips around the world potentially with them, if that's going to be a growing role for our faculty, as well as being more productive, increasingly engaged as scholars in their own disciplines or in interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary ways, then obviously we're going to have to work with faculty and work within the institution to create those opportunities, to create the time for that all to take place. And so we have to think very seriously about how we remake, the faculty remake the expectations, roles, and so forth to accommodate the kinds of changes that we as a community ultimately identify are necessary to provide the kind of education that our students need and to provide the kind of leadership and opportunities for our faculty in research and scholarship to do. So it's a very, very interesting question. And I think the answer is we're going to approach it multiple levels. We'll approach it incrementally. We'll look for opportunities. And I think, as I met this last week with the External Advisory Board for the Harrington School of Communications, there, as they think about how to create a 21st century School of Communications, they're grappling with these very questions. And I think it is an opportunity for us to craft solutions in their work of the faculty, the administration, the External Advisory Board, to craft the future for the Harrington School of Communications, to put some models out there for all of us to look at. But I think the question is a good one, it's an important one, it's a timely one, and we need to go about it in a thoughtful way, because obviously what we want to do is create an opportunity for our faculty to do what they're really good at, what they excel at, to do more of it, to do it better, to have a larger impact, and to engage undergraduate as well as graduate students in that work. And that means we have to think thoughtfully and hard about how we're going to make that work for our faculty as well as our students in the institution. So that I thought was a terrific question. Yes? Sure.
So we get the phones ringing all the time. And we don't necessarily have the infrastructure to support everything that you're out here telling them. I just came from the job fair down at the Ryan Center. We should be very proud of our Career Center. They have over 90 employers there. I spoke to about 10 or 12 alumni. One of them was an engineering alumni who says, "You're doing a great job at getting out there and talking to companies." But I have to say that we're on that flip side. We're trying to do these project-based learnings and get the faculty engaged. But the frustration is we don't have resources to back that. We don't have necessarily the infrastructure, and I mean that both from policy as well as maybe computer technology to handle that load. And I'm wondering now, almost 2 years into this, is where are we going and how are we going to get there? Because we certainly want to get there. We're, especially at this business school, we want to get there. We want to be engaged. We want to be a leader in it. But I think we're a little frustrated as to, okay, how do we get there? So can you address that?
Well, you know, I can talk about that on multiple levels. First, I can give you the answer that very many presidents fall back on, which is very tempting, which is, you know, it's the president's job to go out there and promote the university and talk about these things. It's your job to make it work. You know, what part of that, you know, shared responsibility do you not understand? But I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that. Because your question is a critical one for us. I mean, these are resource questions at the end of the day. But resource questions ultimately are decided by where your passions, your enthusiasm, what your vision is. And so I think it's important for us to get, all of us, to get that enthusiasm and that vision out there in front of people, to say, this is what we want to do, and in a certain sense say to people, help us do it. Because part of those resources, I think we want to lay the groundwork for, can come from outside the institution, from our external partners who see the value that could be produced if we take what we've already been able to do at the level. They can see the value and say, okay, now imagine what we can do if we can double that, triple that. And I think that will be a way to bring resources into the institution, one. Two, I think the provost and a group of deans and others for the past several months, too many months, have worked on the policy part of this, the organizational structure part of this, to look at how can we be more efficient with regard to fielding those phone calls, lining students up with interest, tracking how they're doing, making basically this brokerage work between external partners and the interest of our students and the expertise of our students and faculty. How can we make that work better organizationally from a policy perspective? That report's now done. It's on Don DeHaze's desk, along with about 150 other things. I've told him, however, that I expect a conclusive answer for this within 48 hours. And it won't arrive that quickly. But your point is, we will get that done, and we'll get some recommendations out there and some decisions out there about how we can organize ourselves better and more efficiently to facilitate. And then the question becomes, yes, as we go forward in the budgeting process, and let's hope that in the coming years that we'll have revenues come into the institution from partners, from other sources, that'll enable us to begin to make these allocations. Some of the allocations are going to need to be strategic reallocations to build this up. Part of my point about thinking through all of our roles here at the institution is to say, well, if we want to shift faculty to play more of a role here, if this is going to become an important role for faculty to engage in this way, then what can we relieve faculty of doing so that those resources and time, as well as potentially dollars, can go to support those activities? And that's what I think we'll have to take that incrementally, but I think we're making progress already, and I think we'll continue to make progress. You know, I think we all have to bear through the frustrations that we'll inevitably run into as we make these changes, but let's not lose sight of, I think, the final outcome, which will be a much better outcome from our students than if we didn't do it. Thanks for the question. Yeah?
I was wondering if you could, I'm Matt Boda, I'm chair of the economics department, and I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about some lessons learned from your recent trip to Houston and maybe tie that into what you see the university's future is, the development of the Knowledge District in Providence.
Sure. For those of you who don't know, I accompanied the governor, a couple of key members from his staff, Ruth Simmons, the president of Brown, Keith Stokes, the director of the Economic Development Corporation here in Rhode Island, to Houston to visit the Texas Medical Center, which is maybe one of 3 or 4 world-leading medical centers on the planet, and extremely large. It has nearly 100,000 employees. It has nearly 30 participating institutions. It's a world center for everything that has to do with healthcare, basically. Includes schools of nursing and pharmacy and allied health, as well as the medical schools of Baylor, Rice, and others. What did we learn there that's relevant to what URI could do and I think should do here in Rhode Island? What we learned is a few things. One, I think we learned that this concept that came forward in the last legislative session, upon which we're still working in response to the request for the General Assembly to do a systematic feasibility study, of partnering with Rhode Island College and building a single facility in Providence, in the former Jewelry District, in close proximity to Brown University's medical school and Lifespan and the other big healthcare providers in the greater Providence area, is a potentially transformative step, not just for the institutions and for our students, but for the city and the state. It could be the kind of catalyst, I think, that turns heads from Boston to New York, that has people thinking about what in the world is going on in Rhode Island, what is happening in Providence, to see a project like this emerge that has so much cooperation and collaboration at its core between entities like the University of Rhode Island College, Brown University, Lifespan, Care New England, the state, and the city. I think the opportunity there is pretty extraordinary, actually. For us to come in and do something. There's a way to do that that might attract private sector co-development with us that we're seriously considering in terms of how they might make this project happen sooner rather than later. And we'll be presenting the results of that study to the General Assembly probably in another couple of weeks, and then really beginning to work with them to just consider how it is that we can move that agenda forward. It's part of what I think should be an expanded agenda for the University of Rhode Island in Providence, the capital city, the center of the state's population. We have other programs that already exist there that are very successful. We have programs that may wish to have a wider impact by being at least in part located up there. We'll be looking at that as we go forward. We have research operations that currently take place in Providence because of the proximity, again, of the collaborative networks that exist there and not here. We want to expand on those. That may be another possibility that we'll look at. So I think it is a big opportunity for the University of Rhode Island to have a larger presence in the capital city, a broader set of programs there, a closer relationship with partners there that enable us to bring resources together to do things that we wouldn't be able to attract if we pursued a strictly independent course. I think all of those possibilities exist. Some of them are pretty likely, and we're hoping that we'll be able to move that forward using some of the lessons from Texas, that the value of collaboration and cooperation, the value of proximity and co-location was terrific. The value of research coupled with patient care in the biomedical area, in the healthcare area, was very apparent there, and the enormous economic collateral impact that can have from that concentration. I mean, the Texas Medical Center is the largest employer in Houston, as an example. We can have, I think, a similar, obviously, Rhode Island scale impact here. Other questions? I have more from the list. Yes, sir.
Would you share with the community your vision of how technology can improve productivity, reduce costs, improve the quality of use of technology?
Well, let me start with the last one because I think it's the most important. I'm most interested in what technology can do to improve quality. I think that's the first and foremost thing that we want to think about. I'm persuaded by the kinds of studies that are being studied, by the innovative, groundbreaking research that people are doing across the country in some of these areas, by some of the things our own faculty are doing here at the University of Rhode Island. I think it's very clear that the appropriate use of the kinds of tools which are now available to us technologically in teaching and learning can improve the quality of the experience and the outcomes for the students. I think there are many, many things that demonstrate that that's true in a variety of disciplines. Not in everything yet, because no one size fits everything that an institution like this does. And so you want to do it in a way that's very appropriate for the discipline, the program, and the modalities of instruction and learning that exist in that program. But there's no question that in a great many areas, that the data, in my opinion, are pretty clear that what advantages the judicious, appropriate use of technology can bring to the student learning process, and in the same time, free up faculty to do other things than some of the things they're currently doing, because there are ways that technology can do that just as well, and in fact, in many cases, better. Because that then would generate the opportunity for the faculty to be engaged with students in ways that the students themselves are likely to tell us is even more valuable for them. I mean, yes, standing up in front of a classroom, if you're a gifted instructor, can be a really terrific experience for a student. I had many of those experiences as an undergrad. I saw many of my colleagues at Amherst College could hold a room larger than this, absolutely spellbound. And people poured into class to hear particular lectures because the lecture in and of itself was famous. Given all of that, there are ways that we can enhance that experience, I think, broaden that level of excellence using technology in the appropriate ways, and free up the faculty to interact with students in other ways which the students value even more than that, and which makes a bigger difference in their preparation and their success than the most brilliant discourse on a stage like this. So I think that's what I see. Yes, technology can improve productivity. I think one of the things technology has done is made all of us 24/7 workers in many parts of the United States and in many areas, and that didn't used to be the thing. I mean, it used to, you could leave your office and go home, and that was it. And we all know that that doesn't happen anymore. You know, I think sometimes Lynn wants to take my BlackBerry and throw it out the window. And you probably all had those experiences too. I tell her that there are many times, however, I could grab her BlackBerry and throw it out the window, and she would be in trouble. And yeah, that has fueled what we would call productivity gains, and I imagine that more of that could continue. Do I see that technology is going to produce massive cost savings for the institutions? I don't believe that necessarily, because I think typically when people look at what it can do, they're not appropriately thinking about the quality of the outcomes from students. Yes, it is possible to put a bunch of material online, allow 1,000 students to sign up for that course, and in a very perfunctory way, quote unquote, deliver that material to those 1,000 students with very little interaction. That is possible. Does that produce for the students what they need? I'm doubtful. And so I'm far more cautious about major cost savings from the use of technology on the instructional side. I think technology will, save us costs on the business development side because it allows for consolidation. And I think, Bob Wagon's division has been looking, as Don, and it's even part of the academic plan, for us to look for ways to use technology to build more efficiency into our institution, in our business practices and other kinds of practices, and that allow those resources to be directed to education, frankly. That's where I'd put them anyway, and research, as opposed to simply propping up antiquated business practices, of which we have here in Rhode Island a staggering number of antiquated business practices. And that's where I'm frustrated, as you can probably tell. I'm still signing paper that I have no business even seeing, and I can't seem to persuade people that I really don't have any business seeing that, and we need to change it because the people we need to persuade sometimes are not here. Good question. Other questions or comments? There was one other I got by email I just wanted to mention to you, and it was about global engagement and study abroad. And this came from a student, actually, as a pharmacy and a Spanish major who's been abroad multiple times and has gained an interest in global and public health, especially in developing countries. Great question, great motivation, just exactly the kind of thing that we want to encourage and dramatically grow here at the University of Rhode Island, is create those opportunities. Last night we did the Rainville Awards in this room. One of the most inspirational evenings of the year, when you give awards to students for the leadership that they're showing in doing all kinds of things on the campus, off the campus, globally, ranging from Habitat for Humanity to global poverty to a whole host of things. And I think what we want to do is grow that spirit so that it encompasses almost all of our students, everyone who's interested, and provide them those opportunities here. There's a lot of problems to deal with in this small state. And we've been approached by groups like Habitat for Humanity and other groups who are trying to build a better quality of life here in Rhode Island, who want to tap into what they see from the outside as the energy, enthusiasm, creativity, and talent of our students. Our Greek system does enormous good work. You can count on them to show up at practically everything the university promotes in terms of service. They're there. Many of our other student organizations. We have dozens of student organizations who do this. What we want to do over time is grow that even beyond where it is now and become more globally engaged. I think our leadership minor is a program that deserves to be bigger than it is, and we want to look at how we can do that, create more opportunities for students to do that. I think creating more opportunities in service and experiential learning that involve community service, public service, global service, I think creates wonderful opportunities for students to grapple with problems, big problems that haven't been solved yet. And that's in and of itself an incredible learning environment for a student to be placed into. And we can capitalize on the learning opportunities for students and at the same time their passion for doing good things, for doing service, and create something that I think not only prepares the students for success after they graduate, but does good things right now. Our students involved in the Feinstein Center to End Hunger in America, amazing work that they've been doing for a number of years, reaching tens of thousands of people over time with help about how to manage in these increasingly stressed financial times with the simple requirements to feed themselves and their families. Amazing good work, based here at the University of Rhode Island. So I think that needs to be a priority for us, and I really think we need to become more globally and internationally involved in all of these areas. And it's one of the reasons I mentioned the USAID grant. We've got a great record of success already that's recognized internationally and by the federal government, and I think we can create more of those opportunities for students. Anything else? Are you leaving, Dean, or are you going to ask a question?
I'm going to say something.
Oh, no.
On board pharmacy, we hadn't our future of next year's budget and beyond?
Well, that was a nice sermon, Dean Jordan. And of course, it was a completely accurate sermon. So thank you. I mean, it is something that is a cultural change for public universities and certainly for the University of Rhode Island. That is, as we have become an institution that primarily succeeds in terms of building a budget that's a budget that enables us to teach and do research at a level of excellence, that depends on our own work now, far more than it does the work of the General Assembly. That's just a fact. That's just a fact. And that's a change from what was the case for the University of Rhode Island 20 years ago. And what that means for all of us, is, as Dean Jordan was pointing out, is that everything we do has to be done in the framework, particularly with regard to the recruitment and retention of students, from the point of view of saying this is now important to the very existence of the university, that without compromising our academic standards in any way, and I think far too many institutions have gone down the road of sacrificing academic standards in order to retain students, to maintain a financial bottom line, and I think that's tragic. The point is that without going down that road, without even taking one step down that road, all of us need to be constantly asking ourselves the question, how do we provide the kind of experience that our students and families around them, the people of Rhode Island and elsewhere, are looking for in an institution? One, how do we share with them the importance of rigorous academic programs and high achievement? Two, how do we facilitate that? How do we advise the students? How do we support the students? How do we direct the students so that they can achieve their success? How do we make sure that all of the things that can be such distractions to their success, okay, are things that they can deal with? How do we provide enough distractions to the students so they can decompress? All of those become part of our life at the University of Rhode Island, part of why we're here. And, the days are gone. The days are just gone when it was permissible to stand in front of a group of students and do the old thing, which the old cliche, look to the right, look to the left, 2 to 3 of you will be gone because I'm tough, and this is a do or die proposition. If we continue, and we don't here at the University of Rhode Island, but if that attitude continued, it's a road to basically failure on a national level, because we need young people more than ever to succeed, to get a higher education, to get the critical tools that they need to compete in a 21st century world, because the competition is no longer with the person down the block. When you go and apply for a job, it used to be if you look for a job in the auto industry in Detroit, basically the only people you competed with for that job were other residents of Detroit and suburbs. Those days are gone forever. And we have to prepare our students to be successful in that global economy, in that global society. And we need them to be successful. We need them to get the tools of critical thinking, analytical reasoning, of strong communications, as well as depth of knowledge and appreciation for the breadth of human experience, a multicultural understanding, the ability to work with people who are very, very different than they are. We have to equip our students with all of those things now more than ever, for our country's sake, for our sake. So we need, I think, to do everything we can to, one, make sure that the students we come here are successful. Yeah, some of them are not going to succeed because they don't want to right now. We may pick them up later when they, age a couple of years, decide it's not so great after all. I'm going to go back to the University of Rhode Island and finish up with a lot more attention to what I was doing and a lot less attention to what I wasn't doing. And so I think we can do that. And I think we need to do that. And it's important for all of us to be a party to that, to be a participant in that. And we can do that, I think, without changing our absolute insistence on excellence in everything that we do. Thank you, Dean Jordan. A longer sermon. Yes, sir.
You reviewed the significance of being able to engage the student body to encourage student success. What have you done to, I suppose, facilitate that attitude in the instructors of wanting to engage with the students and get them active in the university community and their studies?
Well, I think, first of all, before I got here, I think our faculty came together, a lot of our faculty came together and crafted the academic plan for the institution that embodies that this is what we're about. And I think the emphasis on remaking general education, the progress that we're making there, I think is a great example of really thinking about what we're doing in light of what can we do to increase the probability that our students will be successful. Because the general education curriculum right now is difficult for some students to manage. You know, it's different if you're a Bachelor of Science and they're a Bachelor of Arts. It's difficult to maybe sometimes transfer between colleges. We need to get those kinds of things, I think, to a certain degree, fixed so that students have the ability to do that more than they do right now. And that's just one example. But you're right, we have a ways to go there. But I'm encouraged when I talk to faculty that there is a lot of passion around this. I think the fact that we had so many faculty come out in January to look at how to develop and use new web-based tools to enhance teaching and learning was another very good sign. We want to create more of those kinds of opportunities for faculty, more workshops, more professional development opportunities. And frankly, one of the things that we want to do is create pipelines to bring people into the institution from outside of the institution to help us learn from them about how to do these kinds of things. And we're working on that as well. But at the bottom level, it's a cultural change for everybody to really put foremost in our minds, in our thinking, about what are we going to do to help our students be successful. And that's the primary reason that we're here.
Thank you.
Okay? All right, thank you all.